Hello and welcome back, boys and girls, to another edition of Sean's Messy Garage. No, that's not right. Mountain's Garage. There we go. It is a overcast, somewhat warm Thursday afternoon here in the beautiful state of Maine. And unfortunately, snow is forecast for Friday and Saturday. Oh well. It's inevitable it's going to happen. It is wintertime. Well, still fall technically. Soon to be winter. And that's what happens here in the Northeast. But today we're going to talk about my love of the Olds Pontiac Buick Cadillac late 60s transmission cases. They're all heavy duty. When you cut the bell housing off and put an aftermarket bell housing on one of these heavy duty cases, that is as good as you can get strength wise until you buy an aftermarket case. And of course, an aftermarket case is bomb proof, SFI rated, so you don't need to run a shield. You still need a transmission shield over the body of this transmission. The bolt-on bell housing is only going to protect the flex plate from when it explodes. Yes, you have to buy an SFI rated flex plate and then an SFI rated shield to put over your flex plate. So this is the best you can do in stock form, and I collect these. I have probably 8 of them. They arrive in a box just like this with the bell housing roughly cut off, and they all certainly are a mystery, every one, and solving the mystery is half the fun. I bought this particular case, just showed up today, and I bought it for one reason and one reason only. There's no speedometer provision. It's not a cut plug, it is cast aluminum, solid, all the way into the back. That is pretty unique. And I hadn't done any research as to why General Motors would do such a thing. And I now know on what application they did it, but I don't know why they did it. This transmission case is an Oldsmobile. Near as I can tell from the tag, I've been trying to put ink on it and rub it so I can read it. Seems to be a 66 OB code. And the Oldsmobile stuff is semi-hard to find, but the OB code shows up in every year except 1966 in the list that I had. They show it in 65, they show it in 67 and 68, and it means different things. A clue, while I was reading, is that and I don't know why they do this, Oldsmobile in the 88 model decided to drive, and maybe other models, decided to drive the speedometer off the right front wheel. That costs money. Why would they go from the established program of just having a speedometer driving the transmission and a cable up to the dash? That baffles me. Why? But I guess maybe they were looking to reinvent the wheel. So what makes this HD? First off, I got to quit sliding the transmission case around the bench because every time I do, the camera shakes. But in the Turbo 400 cases, heavy duty, you have these continuous ribs right here that go all the way back to the tail housing. You don't see those on a Chevy. If you can see it, nothing. You have reinforcing ribs of various designs all through the bell housing and even up in the upper web, if it was here to show you. You don't see that in the Chevrolet. You typically see the Chevrolet case broken at some point in its life because they're really thin. The pan rail is seemingly twice as thick as the Chevy case. Now, the Chevy made an HD case, which is better than the stock one, not as good as these. So that's what makes this Turbo 400 case heavy duty. I'm a Chevrolet lover, but in this case, no, I guess pun intended, I don't know why they cheated us, if you will, and scrimped out on their cases when, once again, kind of like the speedometer mystery, why different divisions do things differently. I mean, internally, if I had the internals included when it showed up, Olds, Buick, Pontiac, Cadillac, they stuck with the good stuff, aluminum pistons and the smooth drum, much longer than Chevy did. Chevrolet bailed out in a hurry. Maybe it's just sheer numbers, and maybe they make more Chevys, so they got to cheapen them up somehow. But either way, now in a lot of cases, not in 1966 that I've seen, but later ones, it's not unusual to have two terminals on the electrical pass-through. Now, in the mid-60s, 1966, this no doubt meant it had a switch-pitch torque converter. And there's a few other clues as to whether it did or not, because, of course, everything is missing. If it had the switch-pitch converter, the converter itself is completely different. You'll see like 6 rosette or maybe 8 rosette welds around the center of the converter. It just looks really strange. The input shaft is no question that is not a regular Turbo 400. It sticks out. It's smooth where you're used to seeing just a little set of splines and then it necks down. I don't have a pump right in front of me, but you can't mistake or accidentally put the wrong torque converter in a switch pitch. And on the back of the pump itself is different. So the converter is different, the pump is different, the input shaft is different, and the electrical connector is different. There's an actual solenoid. It looks like a lot like a kickdown solenoid bolted to the back of the pump, and the switch pitch is the only transmission they did that in. The switch pitch idea was you could have 2 different stall speeds. You could have a high stall for acceleration and then a low stall for cruising. Kind of a cool idea. That's long before torque converter technology took off. You know, we had the switch pitch, you had a stock converter, or then they went to switch pitch, so they kind of played with stall a little bit. And then, you know, in drag racing, they went through the clutch turbo or clutch flight phase, I should say. You know, that was early 70s because torque converter technology hadn't taken off. Nowadays, that's, you know, foolish to even think you'd bolt this to a manual Bellhausen and have a clutch applying stress to all these parts. But hey, they were trying to get a better launch, and eventually we arrived where we are today. Converter technology now is probably better than it ever has been and getting better all the time. I might have said input shaft, which I believe is different, but it's the actual stator tube that is long and fat looking, completely unlike any other Turbo 400. So in the later years, having a 2-pronged electrical pass-through was just for the transmission controlled spark. There's a switch on the valve body, so just because you see the 2-pronged terminal, they used it for 2 different reasons. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's the same pass-through. You can buy them any transmission parts warehouse, you know, single terminal or dual terminal. So sometimes I like the dual terminal. If you have an internal solenoid trans brake, you could actually run the ground out, you know, somewhere else. But in reality, I guess you're better off to ground it right here and then ground the transmission. So I have no intentions of running this as a switch pitch transmission. And other than the dual-pronged electrical pass-through, how do I know if it even was a switch-pitch transmission? All the other parts are missing. Well, in the switch-pitch models, in this hole right here, I hope you can see it, which is normally open, I believe it's a line pressure cavity. In the switch-pitch models, and this has it, there is a orifice cut plug with a tiny hole in it where that hole should be wide open. So you either need to drill it out or knock it out. But either way, the fact that that is present in this case means it was indeed a switch pitch transmission. So there's a lot of Buick and Olds guys that are still running, and there's a small following of people that still run their switch pitch converters, but not anything I'm interested in. So I'm coming up on my 3-year YouTube anniversary, I believe, in January. On that fateful day at lunchtime when I decided I was going to come out and make a video. And I did, and here I am. It's been an amazingly positive experience. Met some great people. All in all, completely positive. But just about once a year, you get one person that is not necessarily positive. The other day, I wake up to a message, and it says, it wasn't very wordy, so it's pretty easy to remember. It said, moron. Now, let me back up. The video that he was commenting on was from a couple years ago, and the title of the video was Big Block Chevy Pushrod Length, I believe. I was measuring pushrod length in this video, and the main title was Big Block Chevy. So he says, moron, and he capitalizes just the O's. He really wanted to drive the pain home, you know what I mean? Moron, it's Chevrolet. Chevy does not exist. Well, I responded positively, and I responded with the fact, I didn't tell him the whole story. In the weaning days of high school, our English teacher told us we had to write an essay on something that we liked. And at the time, sitting right outside was my 70 Chevelle SS454, so I researched and did a paper on Chevrolet. In the 1930s, as early as the 1930s, they were already using in marketing and naming Chevy. If you remember, the first Novas were actually called Chevy 2. They had an emblem. Chevrolet has used this in marketing the whole time. So I responded that, yes, they do exist. Chevy is a word, and a lot of times, no matter how negative people are, if you just respond, they respond back and everything's pretty smooth. Their approach may be a little rough. Their initial, maybe they didn't mean to sound that, But he basically responded and told me I was still wrong, and they only do it, to take advantage of the idiots that, the redneck crowd that, would buy into something like that, something to that effect. You can actually read if you go back on my page and look at the comments. So it's there for all the world to see, because that's what happens when you respond on the internet. You're forevermore, your comment is there. So I thought it was funny. Again, most everybody's positive, and I appreciate that. Hope you have a great day.